For the first time to CNN, someone on the inside of the operation recruiting migrants out of San Antonio, Texas, is telling his story on camera. The man we spoke to, himself a recently arrived migrant, describing details of working with a woman who many have said identified herself only as Perla. He says he was living on the streets of San Antonio for 28 days before Perla offered him clothes, food, and money to help her secure migrants for the flight to Martha's Vineyard. He showed us her business card, text messages, and let us listen to audio messages from Perla revealing she was still in contact with him as recently as last week. For his safety, we are protecting his identity. Who approached you?
A woman. She said her name was Perla. I didn't know if that was her real name. I didn't ask either. My only intention was to help the people so they could get some stability. She had told me that the people who were going to Massachusetts before I sent them, she had told me that they were going to receive them. They were going to live. They were going to stay. They were going to help them with the language, and those who had children, they were going to study.
From Ron DeSantis' move to send 50 migrants up to Martha's Vineyard last few weeks ago, we're now seeing some more details of the person who helped him recruit many folks to get on that plane to go up there. As we remember, Perla Huerta is actually the woman's name, but the man who was a part of helping her coordinate and find folks to put on that plane is now speaking out and is identifying her as her full name. We're gonna get some more details of who she is and where she came from, which is puzzling. But let's let him continue. There's more details here.
He says he messaged Perla that the migrants were nervous because nobody was there to meet them and they were sleeping on the side of the road. He showed us what he says Perla texted back. Tell them to call the numbers we gave them. The church, the state has to take care of them. Later that night, he says she left him an audio message saying, I know they were scared at first, but now they are in a much better place and they are going to be taken care of there like you have no idea. I know they arrived in another city, but it is within Massachusetts. Believe me, they are going to have a much better life than here or anywhere else. He says he believed everything Perla promised him. Over the last few days, he says she's been warning him not to talk to reporters, texting him, if a reporter calls you, don't say anything. He says he didn't know Governor Ron DeSantis was responsible for the planes to Martha's Vineyard until he saw the news, and Perla never informed him who she was working for.
More damning details. Here's some more about who Perla Huerta is. Huerta served in the US Army for more than 20 years. US Army spokesperson Madison Bonzo confirmed to CNN. Perla Huerta served as a combat medic specialist and counterintelligence agent in the regular army from April of 2002 to August of 2022. She deployed to Iraq from May of 2003 to July of 2004 and October of 2008 to October of 2009. Afghanistan from December of 2010 to July of 2011. Bonzo said all this. She held the rank of Master Sergeant at the end of service. Huerta was discharged in August, is what the Times reported, citing military records. Here's a couple details of how she continued to betray them. Is what they said. This woman named Perla, most of them said, had approached them in San Antonio about a free flight to Massachusetts. There were jobs there, they were told, and people to help them. The woman provided the mostly destitute migrants with free meals at McDonald's and a place to stay at a nearby La Quinta Inn before the flight. They also received that folder that was talked about before with the maps and everything, and they're gonna have this job here and lodging and everything there. It was a big lie. And as a matter of fact, they compared the English version of what they had prepared versus the Spanish version of what they prepared, and it was two different messages there. So Army officer Jessica, discharged, no longer within the Army, but apparently someone within DeSantis's network decided to use her to help them fool these folks into getting on the plane to go up there so they can make their big political statement.
Yeah, it can't be underestimated what they're willing to do to push their agenda. This is a counterintelligence agent. This is imperialism coming home. Since the beginning of the United States becoming an imperial nation, we have used the CIA and our intelligence community to push one thing, and that is the protection of global capitalism in a way that benefits the United States. We decided to intervene in every single country where they were trying to elect leadership that was going to prevent the United States from exploiting exploiting the labor of the people there and extracting their resources. And every single time there was a leader that said, you know what, we shouldn't let the United States do this to us. We sent the CIA there to foment fear and foment something that would look like a political movement against that leader. Sometimes we would just directly kill them and coup them. And now we have counterintelligence agents pushing the same far-right agenda that will protect corporate interests in the United States at home with people within our country's borders. It was only a matter of time before this happened. And if there's one thing that demonstrates the fact that the CIA and our intelligence community and the foreign policy establishment doesn't fight for the United States or the people living here, they fight for the elites who own stock in those corporations and who are the owners of those corporations. And I don't think this is the only situation where we have people who worked for the CIA working with members of government to push an agenda here at home.
By the way, so we also have Ron DeSantis, who's decided to become the next leader of the Republican Party. He's found a way to actually be that kind of leader. Yes, let's use these types of counterintelligence agents to fool people into going up there, and then we can just act like I had nothing to do with it. I don't know what's going on. Here's the last little bit piece of irony there, Jess. Because now this is happening in the other direction. Hurricane Ian is just devastating Florida and a bit of South Carolina as well. The migrants here that they now are worried about taking people's jobs. Remember that part? This is what's happening now. The migrants had scanned information about whom they'd be working for. These are folks that are getting sent from New York down to Florida to work on rescue efforts and recovery and rebuilding efforts after the hurricane hit. So here's some details. The migrants here had scanned information about whom they'd be working for, but they still piled into vans in Queens, New York, that they said were headed to the Sunshine State over the weekend. They want us for hurricane cleanup. They said we'd get paid $15 an hour, overtime, and $15 for food daily. I think, said Javier Moreno, who's 37 years old. He noted that a woman named Camila from an organization, he said, approached him with a flyer. Man, this sounds familiar. But this one actually might be something where they're sending folks to actually work because they need them now. Now, this wasn't associated apparently with DeSantis or government agencies or FEMA or any of that. This apparently is probably some private company, if this is on the up and up, that they're sending folks now from the north right back down to Florida, and those southern states didn't want nothing to do with these migrants. We want nothing to do with them. Don't you know they're a stain on our community? They bring violence and drugs and cleanup efforts after our communities are destroyed by natural disasters. And we can talk about why those natural disasters continue to get worse and policies that allow that. It's all connected, Jessica, but they'll never let anyone really know that part.
Yeah, of course. You've got the people in power really pushing that we need more people unemployed right now because there's too much power in the labor market. What they really want is cheap labor. They'll tell you immigrants are coming to steal your jobs. They really just want to pay people less money. The people you need to be mad at are the corporations and the people who are governing on behalf of those corporations, people like DeSantis, who are pushing the same rhetoric of immigrants are coming to steal your jobs. People even going so far as to saying there's an invasion across our southern border. Those people are fleeing. All of the violence that we started there when we went and destabilized the region, which we just talked about on behalf of US interests, those people are refugees, but they're happy to take that cheap labor. The people you need to be mad at are the people who want to keep our wages low so their profits can be high. It's clear as day. But because these people are racist, they can weaponize that racist ideology and push this kind of a narrative, which is just not true.
Nothing is more important to these folks than the racism that drives everyone else. People get mad when I've said, hey, Donald Trump's entire message began with racism. That was the hook. Ever since, all those racists have been hooked on it. And they're like, I don't care what you do to me, as long as you keep the racism coming, which we just heard he did again, except on Elaine Chao.